Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. I'm your host, Mari Riesberg. Over the past several years, I've combined my degrees in acting and somatic psychology to share my sustaining creativity techniques with performers. And now I've decided to share it with a bigger audience that includes you. I believe we are all creative, and this podcast is all about that. I'll be interviewing people from all backgrounds, ages, and creativity experiences to share just how creative we all are. Today, I'm chatting with Deborah Heiser, CEO and founder of the Mentor Project, author of the Mentorship Edge, and an applied developmental psychologist. Please enjoy Deborah Heiser. Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. Today, I'm here with Deborah Heiser, CEO and founder of the Mentor Project, author of the Mentorship Edge, and an applied developmental psychologist. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
I'm super excited to chat with you about creativity today. But before we get into that, why don't you take a couple of minutes and let our listeners know a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I'm an applied developmental psychologist, and most people think of psychology as looking at pathology, all of the things that are wrong with you or could be. And I look at all of the things that are right with us and that we should expect as we grow older. So we do not stop developing at 12. We continue all the way through our lifespan. And so I look at that. And I am really focused on mentorship and also on legacy, the things that we do that really are developmental milestones for us in midlife. We're built to want to give back. And that's what I look at. Mentorship, philanthropy, volunteering, all of those are things we should expect to do. And I wrote the Mentorship Edge based on that. And I was founder of the Mentor Project, and I'm continuing my work in that area.
I love that. Would you mind sharing a little bit about, for our listeners, what mentorship actually is? I think we hear that term, but if you could tease it apart a little bit, that would be wonderful.
Absolutely. So mentorship is really 5 things. It's most of us just think it's an interaction with another person. It's so vaguely out there that most of us don't have a real clear definition. So we don't know when we're really doing it.
Yeah.
So if you think about brownies, it has a recipe. And if you leave something out, it might look like brownies, but it won't taste like it. So if you leave sugar out, you'd have an untasty batch of what looks like fabulous brownies.
Right.
So here's what mentorship is. Mentorship requires that a person is generative. They want to give back something like an expertise of value or something that they hold inside themselves to someone else. Now that means that there has to be a someone else. Someone has to want what that person is giving. There has to be a matchup with that. If there's not that, then that's not mentorship.
Yeah.
The next thing is it has to be intrinsically motivated. Most people think it can be extrinsic, like a sort of trade-off, and that's not what it is. So you have to want to engage in this without anybody knowing, without anybody giving you money or a reward. And an example of that is if I were to say to you, hey, would you like to go volunteer time at a soup kitchen? You might say, yeah, that makes me feel good to do that. I'd like to go do that. Now you're on your way and I call you and you're just about there. And I say, no, turn left. And instead of going to the soup kitchen, go volunteer your time at Starbucks. Now you're doing the same thing for free, giving out food and beverage to hungry, thirsty people. It just feels very different if you're doing Starbucks versus the soup kitchen. And so intrinsic motivation is the key there. That is what drives mentorship. The next thing is you have to have a meaningful connection. If you don't like your mentor or your mentee, it's really not mentorship. I hear people talk about, the toxic mentor. No, that means they're not a mentor. That is a toxic person in your life is no one you should be considering a mentor. You also need to trust the person. And this is in both directions. So if you feel that you cannot show your vulnerabilities to somebody because you feel like they're going to judge you, maybe they won't give you a job. Maybe they won't give you a promotion. Maybe they'll think differently about you if you're in the community with them. That's something that is needed. Otherwise, it's not mentorship. Likewise, if you're the mentee and the mentor says, you know what, they're going to go steal my idea and run away and make a company out of that, or do something that is going to undermine me, that's also not trust and therefore not mentorship. And finally, there needs to be a goal. So when we're friends with people, we don't have a goal. We're like just willing to hang out on a couch and eat chips and hang out. That's friendship. But when you're mentoring somebody, there's a goal, and that can be a one-off. Help me with this. Can you help, show me how to do this, or give me your knowledge in this area? And that could be one time, or it could be a long-term, ever-changing goal. So these 5 things have to exist in order for mentorship to be there. And you know what? It's there more often than we ever know. And we're mentoring more often than we ever know. And we're being mentored more often than we ever know. And it's so important for us to be able to acknowledge when it's happening, because it makes us feel better about it. Otherwise, we go through life feeling like we're at Starbucks when really we're at a soup kitchen.
I love that. Well, thank you, first of all, for breaking it down and sharing what mentorship actually is. Because I think you're right. It's a term we often hear, but what actually goes into it is not necessarily explained. And as I was listening to you, I just was thinking there is so much opportunity for creativity and creative moments in mentorship. So I'm curious, when you think of mentorship and creativity, what does it mean to you to be creative?
Well, I think creativity is taking something and looking at it differently, repackaging it, building on what we already have. So if I were to look at mentorship or any kind of generativity, which is, volunteering, philanthropy, or mentoring, but if I were to look at mentoring in particular, that is how all of our entrepreneurship, all of our tech developments have happened, is because one person said, I have just this information. Can you help me? They say to somebody else. This is what Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak did. They were lateral mentors. They reached out to somebody else and said, can you help me? You need to have an idea of how that can look outside of how it's presented. That's creativity. You have to have a vision for it outside of what is actually physically drawn there. And I look at all of entrepreneurship as creativity. All of mentorship as creativity. You're taking a little ball of, or a nugget of knowledge, and expanding upon that. You don't know how that's going to turn out. Just like you go to make a painting, you have the blank canvas, and then you're putting something on there that ends up being an end result that may change along the way from what you originally envisioned it to be. But it becomes something new and different. And mentorship is just like that.
That's fantastic. I love how much creativity goes into it and is a rich part of it. I'm curious, how did you get into this field of generative pieces, that call it the world that you study, and what was that call for you?
So it came about because I study aging, and I started out studying everything no one wants to have or get.
Okay.
And so I thought that was what growing older looked like, the potential for all sorts of terrible things.
Yeah.
And I found out I wasn't alone. And when I pivoted and decided to say, what do we have to look forward to? I found there was a ton of stuff that we have to look forward to, that we should actually not be expecting the negative things. Those are outliers. We shouldn't expect to, get Alzheimer's disease or to suffer from depression. These things are outliers. So when I looked at midlife and developmentally, just like walking and talking are developmental stages that we should expect every child should achieve, we have an emotional developmental stage in midlife where we want to give back to others. And so I was like, ooh, how does that look? And then I realized it's mentoring, volunteering, and philanthropy. Those are the 3 ways that we can give back. And when I thought about it, I said, oh, I'm really interested in mentorship, because we're really molding and modeling and bringing out the most potential in others. We're not reinventing the wheel each time, we're expanding on it. And This is how we have religion that gets passed down for centuries, family values and traditions that we all take for granted. We enter a holiday and we know what to expect in the family, when we go to somebody's house. So these are the sorts of things that we may add in our little touches over time or something like that. But when I thought about mentorship, I really thought, wow, if we didn't have mentorship, we wouldn't have had anybody go to the moon. We wouldn't have had any of our big tech booms. In the United States, we have had the founding fathers who were a bunch of guys with different areas of expertise who created a new country. So this was something that was fascinating to me, that in our everyday lives, we're constantly creating new things and making our environment different and better. And that's where I really started to think of mentorship, not from the perspective of the mentee. Like we always hear, go find a mentor. I was like, who is that nameless, faceless person? And how do you do that? Like, do you just yell out your front door, hey, need a mentor? And it's also like, you're supposed to find a mentor and they're supposed to change your life, but you may not even know what you want changed or enhanced. So most of us don't even know what we don't know. So I realized this is actually driven by the mentor. And so the mentor is the one that has to say, I want to give something back. And then I found out mentors, all these top people in the world, had no one to give back to. They were just as lost as the mentees. They were like, hey, and you can't go to a park and be like, hey, kid, you want a mentor? Like, that's creepy and weird. So there was this disconnect. And that's where I ended up really looking at mentorship from a new way. How can we connect individuals to spark and ignite that next level of creativity or that next level of innovation, ingenuity, whatever it is. And that's when I found out there's a real magic out there with mentorship.
Oh my goodness. Hearing you describe it, I'm like, everyone needs a mentor. Everyone needs to be a mentee and have this opportunity to learn and grow and work towards something in their life, whether it's entrepreneurial or, as you talked about, the things that have happened in this country, in the United States around tech booms and all of this. I'm curious, maybe the more challenging pieces of your work in matching mentors with mentees, and where do you find, what are some of those challenges, and then how do you navigate them?
So, I write about this in the Mentorship Edge because it's actually much easier than we think. So all you have to do is look to your left and look to your right, and you know somebody who knows something that you don't know. And you also know something they don't know. So how often have you been in school when somebody said, oh, can you help me with this? And then you said, sure, I'll help. We all do that. We don't think that we just mentored somebody, but we did. We weren't their teacher. We weren't their, advisor. That's more than a friend move. But we do that because we care about them. That's a meaningful connection to us. They trust us. We trust them. All of those components come into play. So most of us think we have to actually go out and formally have somebody, right? And we don't. They're all around us. I'll give you an example. At Thanksgiving, every year, I take out a little set of index cards with my grandmother's handwritten Thanksgiving dinner on it. And I make it complete. And that is a form of mentorship. I have something handed down to her. It has been a family tradition since her mother started it. Now, I didn't realize how valuable that was until I had my uncle come to visit us. And he had been eating his wife's Thanksgiving dinner for like a long time. And he came to visit us. And he was so taken by having his family tradition exactly as it always had been. And he was moved because this was something that felt so deep and just part of him. And I realized that the family traditions that we have, even if it's food, are a form of passing that, those family values down and traditions down the generations and how important they are to us. So these things are around us. We're just not acknowledging it. I had those cards. I didn't think much of them until I realized my kids are going to get those cards.
Hmm.
They're going to have these meals. And so it doesn't have to be religion. It doesn't have to be something like that. It can be culture.
Yeah.
Um, but these sorts of things, we can do this just by looking at who is around us. And the other thing we can do is if we know we have an expertise and we want to do something hierarchical, which is how we usually think about it,
Hmm.
and say, who can I give this to? And how can I make others know that I have this available? So at the Mentor Project, we've always matched based on what the mentor wants to give. We
Mm.
don't say, oh, mentee, what are you looking for? We'll try to figure that out for you. We say, here are our mentors. Is there someone there that you'd like to meet? And then we usually tell them, meet about 4 other people, even if you don't think they're good matches, because you often don't know what you don't know. And those matches often end up sparking something new and creative in an individual.
Absolutely. I love that encouragement to kind of try on a
Yeah.
mentor to see how it's actually going to influence or impact or connect with you before deciding. Because, like you said, you don't know what you don't know. Yeah.
You are a modern mentor. There's new forms of mentorship that are modern.
Mm.
Podcasters are modern mentors because you're giving out expertise in every podcast. And those who are meaningfully connected to your podcast, who download it and listen to it and say, wow, I can't wait to get the next one, or this is something, they're taking in information and they are now absorbing that. And
Mm.
that is how we have modern mentorship. So you may not have thought, I'm going to go out and mentor others. You may have thought, I have an itch, I'm going to scratch it. I want to get some information out, which is what the way most people go about it. And
Hmm.
they either create a Substack, or they create a podcast, or they write a book, or they do something that is
Hmm.
putting themselves out there in a modern form of mentoring.
I love that twist or that modernization of mentorship and how it shows up in our world today. I'm going to ask a very out of left field potentially question for you, but when you were growing up, what was creativity like for you? What's your earliest memory of creativity? And then how does that still play a part in your life today?
Creativity for me, there are a couple of different ones. So I grew up with, my dad was an artist.
Hmm.
So there was the traditional sense of creativity that was around.
Hmm.
And I would say that was just part of my life. It didn't feel creative to me. It felt like this is what you do, right? Is that you express yourself in a different way.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you like an emotional creative moment. And that is that my grandfather, I was the oldest grandchild, and he used to take me out when I was 5 to give my mom a break. And he would drive through town with me in the car, and he would tell me stories about each person that we
Mm.
passed. He'd say,
Hmm.
oh, see Mary over there, she had a hard day today, but she put her kids through college, she did all these amazing things, but she's having a rough day. Or see that guy over there on the bench, his wife just chewed him out for not taking in the dry cleaning. Like, he'd tell me these elaborate stories, and I was always like, okay, grandpa knows everybody. I don't think he knew any of these people, but his main objective was that he told me every single Saturday was, you never, every person has a story. You
Mm.
never know on the outside what's really going on with them.
Hmm.
Each person has a story inside of them, and it's complex. That to me was creative because I ended up becoming a psychologist. And part of that is that I want to know the story that people have inside of them.
Hmm.
And that, to me, every person is a new and different story, and there's creativity there.
I love that. That reminds me of things that I have experienced in my own life through stories and how impactful. And I'm also a therapist, so I too appreciate the stories that people have to share of their own experience in life. And yeah, and so it sounds like there's this very clear direct connection in that storytelling experience into the work that you do now in your life. And for people who may not have had a grandfather sharing stories with them as a kid and who may not feel like they experience creativity in their life, what are some ways that they might seek out creative expression or that more, what you've been talking about, more of that emotional creativity piece.
I would definitely say that emotional creativity is really exciting. You don't have to even have paper and pencil to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's really going inside your own mind. And what is it that makes you feel excited? Where do you go in your mind? Do you go to a beach? You know, if you're saying to yourself, I want to experience something new, what is that drive? Where does it take you when you close your eyes? You know, what is it that you're thinking about? What is your immediate emotion? Are you feeling love? Are you feeling connected with others? Are there other people in your mind where you're going? Are you building things? Are you creating something different? Are you just relaxing and taking things in? So if we do that, we're able to then see what we really want in life and what we want from others. It kind of reveals to us what we're looking for ourselves, from others, what we're looking to create or build for ourselves. And we might surprise ourselves. You know, we often say to ourselves, I have all these check boxes. I'm supposed to get a degree. I'm supposed to get married. I'm supposed to buy a car. I'm supposed to buy a house. Those aren't creative. Those are check boxes. What is it that colors all of those things that we have? You know, is there a way that, how does your house look? You know, or your apartment, where you live? What kind of place are you going to live? Is it going to be in an urban setting, a rural setting? Who do you hang out with? These are kind of creative internal journeys that we can go on that are emotional and can be very fulfilling for us.
Absolutely. I love this piece of emotional creativity because it's not one that I often get to talk about with people. So I'm so glad you're here that we could talk about it today. In terms of, that the more on the emotional end of things, when people are feeling that pull to give back in more of that midlife space, and they may not know what to do. And it sounds like you have this organization that helps people. So, can you tell us a little bit about that and how
Yeah.
people can connect with it?
So the Mentor Project was really formed because we had mentors who wanted to give back. So um, really the way to involve yourself is you just go to the website and click on become a mentee. So you just have to be a student. That's all. And then it's free. And there's onboarding, there's something to onboard, and it takes a little bit of time to just do the paperwork because we are setting you up with individuals. So that's it. But it's free. So mentorship is easy. It's not time consuming. It's not just at the Mentor Project. You could go to other places. There's SCORE. There's, you want to start a company, go to SCORE. They'll help you. If you're not a student, there are lots of different places that you can go. The other thing is you might have an itch that needs to be scratched. And if you're in your own mind and you're saying, what is that? What is that thing I need to scratch? You'll likely be able to identify it. You became a podcaster. There was something in you that said, I need to creatively get my voice out there. And a person could say, you know what, that's not my thing. I like to be behind the scenes. I might go and do something like, become a blogger. I might be somebody who goes and does something physically in person with others. You have a whole host of things. You can get involved in the Rotary Club, in your community, in all of those places that exist, that always have, in your house of worship. But if you do go to the Mentor Project, just click on become a mentee, or click on contact us and let us know how you'd like to get involved. But it's not hard. It's really easy.
I love the access, the barrier to entry, it sounds like, is very low. There are no barriers.
Yeah, you can't get easier. You click a button.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Deborah, for taking the time to chat with me. I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. I have one last question. What does it feel like in your body to be creative?
It feels powerful,
Mm.
and I feel like I have control.
Mm.
And those are two things that I feel like I need. I need to feel like I have control in my life. And there's no worse feeling than feeling powerless. So creativity to me offers me the power and control to be the voice that I want to be.
I love that. Fantastic. Well, if people want to learn more about the Mentor Project, your book, the other things you have out in the world, how could they go about doing that?
So I'm on LinkedIn, Deborah Heiser, and you can also go to mentorproject.org. You can find my book at anywhere you buy books in any format. If you like to listen, because you're a podcast listener, it's an audio form too. You can also find me. I have a website, deborahheiser.com. Pretty much Google me. I'm all over the place.
Perfect. Well, I will put links in show notes so people have easy access. And thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.
Likewise. It's been fabulous. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. We'd love to keep in touch, so follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We are at Sustaining Creativity. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Tag your friends and family so they can listen too. We love to hear from you, so leave your reviews, comments, and questions. Check out our website, sustainingcreativity.com, for upcoming offerings and creativity coaching. Tune in Tuesdays for our next episode. And remember, with creativity, anything's possible.